I'm fired up, dude. Tony, it's so funny, man. First of all, welcome back, Athletor Podcast. Tony Rotundo joins us today.
Hey.
One of the very, 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 very few people in my life that gets the joke, right? And also can speak on the creative aspects of this sport. So thank you very much, Tony, for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So you and I were talking, I guess it was last week while you were at the Pan Am Games, and we were talking about how you kind of became, look, let's be honest, right? Like, it's you, Justin Hawk, the list of elite wrestling photographers is pretty short. Elite. But here's the thing. You and Justin specifically, in my eyes, have separated yourselves. How did you get into that, man? Like, how does one even like kind of go, you know what, I'm going to shoot wrestling for a living?
Well, I wrestled, my whole life. And honestly, I took a sabbatical from wrestling in the 90s, and that was really helpful because my dad was a coach. I was pressured into it. I was cutting a lot of weight as a young kid. And I don't think I loved it. I'd totally fallen out of love with it. Like, I wrestled a couple of years in college, and I discovered that there were other things in the world, like girls and beer. Yeah. And
all good things, by the way. Big fan.
Yeah. And so I took a break. I moved out to San Francisco from Buffalo, New York, and I took like about an 8-year break from it. I did try officiating when I first got there, and I got to tell you, every coach, anybody involved in wrestling should try officiating at least once, because it is thankless and it is very difficult. And having, you're at a little junior high meet and parents are screaming in your face that their kid wasn't pinned, and you're like, first of all, your kid was pinned, and second of all, stop screaming at me because you're just mad that your kid lost the match, right? So anyways, that I suffered for that for about a half a season.
You couldn't, by the way, you couldn't pay me enough to officiate. Like, you just couldn't pay me enough to do it. I'd rather chew on tinfoil.
It should be required, like, military.
I agree. No, it's a service.
It should be required, like to get your coaching certificate.
100%.
You should have to officiate.
I did it so when I was growing up, if you officiated the freestyle and Greco events in New Jersey, they would give you free entry to both styles. And I was like, well, that works because I don't have any money. And my dad was like, yeah, figure it out. And so I would officiate, and immediately I was like, well, this is not for me at all. I'll pay the $30. I'll figure that out, because that is just not for me. But yes, it does give you a certain perspective.
Yeah. So then, I was working around Berkeley High School around 2000, walked into the wrestling room, and immediately I had mentioned that I had officiated before, and the coach, they needed help. So they put a whistle around my neck and said, go officiate. Now, I had not been around the sport for a long time, and I was like, I don't even remember the rules anymore. But they needed help, and I got into coaching way, way deeper than I had ever planned. I coached there for 5 years. There were some great kids, but it was a little bit more intramural. I tell people I wanted to be like the 5th assistant coach at Clovis High School, right? Yes. I wanted to be the guy that comes in that, on Tuesday and Thursday that helps show an old school sit out, right, because they somehow want to learn that. And so I wound up becoming head coach at Berkeley High School, and my heart wasn't in it. It just wasn't for me. I wanted to go and watch and see the best wrestling in the world, if not the country, and college and stuff. And I ran into John Sachs, who was a great photographer in his own right, and he was shooting from the stands in the North Coast section of outside of the Bay Area, and he was putting them up on a website. And I said, that's what I want to do. And I had done photography, quite a bit of photography in high school and college, and just put the two together. And so started the funny story. The day I started there was a 2-day qualification for states, right? The North Coast section tournament on Friday. None of my kids qualified for Saturday. On Saturday, and I was the kind of coach that was like, everybody was my enemy because I am my father's son, right? And it was like, I didn't talk to anybody, even though I didn't have any kids that were competitive. I still had like a chip on my shoulder. So that was Friday, and I walk into the room on Saturday with a camera, and I'm telling you, like, it was such a completely different world. I was friendly. I was jovial. I was joking around with coaches. I was no longer, we were no longer air quote enemies. Not that we got any respect at all, but it was like, yeah, this is it. And literally that first day, I'm taking some decent pictures, which is hard for a new person to do. And so I knew, and John knew very early on, that it was like, this is a path. This is something to do.
I got to interrupt you. I'm sorry. Yeah. Why do you feel that you were so much happier with a camera in your hand as opposed to a whistle or clipboard as a coach?
Because I was neutral, because I was there for everyone else. I wasn't getting yelled at by coaches from an officiating standpoint. I wasn't competing with anybody else. I was there to give. I was there to do this craft and this art, and give back to the sport. And honestly, like, I don't know the cliches, but my heart was just so full of joy, capturing these moments and then I got into this competitiveness within myself, and I guess sort of with other wrestling photographers, but it's like, well, that was a great shot. I want more. So if you've ever played golf, right? It's like crappy shots, right? And then you get that feel, that one perfect shot. It's usually toward the end of the game, right when you're ready to throw your clubs in the pond, right? And you're like, oh, that felt good. That sounded. You're the guys you golf with are like, that sounded good, and you're like, oh, that felt good. And so you get those photos. And it's like, I want more of that. I want more of that dopamine that happens, right, when you're like, that was a great shot. And so you start to get inspired the better you get, and then you start to get feedback, right? And the feedback is almost all love. It's very rare for somebody to say, hey,
that was a shitty shot. Yeah.
Right. Tony, you took a really crappy shot and posted it. See, here's the thing. I take a lot of shitty shots. I just don't. So that's an enormous part of it. And we could get into that whole notion we call editing, right? Is like, I mean, that takes a ton of time. I'll come out from a session with 5,000 shots, right? I'll will it down to 2,500. I'll go to another pass. I'll will it down to about 500. I'll go to another pass, and I'll whittle it down to about 250. So there are a lot of shots that suck, and they're out of focus, or there's a ref in the way, or the timing wasn't just right.
I have more shots of referees' asses than I care to. Like, it's kind of, it's ridiculous. It's almost like, I'm pretty sure they do it on purpose.
Yeah,
but go ahead.
Absolutely. No, totally. So I think it's that joy of giving back to the sport and then getting feedback. So we started to get into a loop, right? So it was like the joy of being able to capture, being good at it, and being able to capture like really high quality shots, and then getting the feedback from that. It makes you want to do it more and more and more. And so, I started traveling. I started getting into bigger events. I've been to, I don't know, 16 NCAA championships. And of course, the first one, I wasn't invited down on the floor. You got to pay your dues. You got to put in your time. I mean, like any craft, like wrestling, any sport, whatever, what is it? The 10,000, you got to hit a move 10,000 times before you're proficient at it, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. It's no different, right?
Hey, well, hold on. Let me interrupt. I'm sorry, because I want to get back to a word that you used. Service. Sure. I wonder if, and I'm singling you out because I'm speaking to you, but what I'm really doing is kind of talking to coaches across the board. I wonder if we spent more time in service of others if we'd find more joy in it. And so do you think that if you spent more time in the servitude of coaching, that you would have found more joy in it?
It's tricky to say. I think it's environment. I think you have to be in the right environment. If and I don't want to disparage the kids, not that any of them are listening to this podcast, that I was coaching at Berkeley, but it was intramural. I was watching the kids for an hour and a half after school. And so I was not getting back from that service that I was, providing, whatever. And so my heart was fading from it. It wasn't bringing me joy. So I think it's tricky. I think if you just throw someone into something and say, serve them, do your service, they're not always going to get joy out of that if they aren't getting the feedback that they need, right? Sure. If it's going nowhere, if you're banging your head against the wall, eventually you just don't want to do that anymore.
Sure, that makes sense.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Okay.
The getting back, you had asked like, well, what makes it me or Justin unique, and there is there's a distillation. So taking a good picture is only one part of it, right? And then there's carrying and the craft of art, and that's really kind of we were chatting about last week, right? Something inspired me. Some text, like Twitter debate about generative fill, and stuff like that, being able to mask out other people. And I'm like, all photography, in my mind, and this is debatable, but all photography is art. Even if it's journalism, it's art, right? Even if it's sports photography, it's art. And that's kind of what inspired me to come on and talk about, like, you really have to be an artist. You have to really care about the artistry. And so, with the cameras now taking 15 to 20 frames a second, which shot is the perfect shot of those 20 frames? And then, you have to bring it into your processing, applications, and you have to tune it, and you have to crop it, and you have to do all these things, and you have to turn that moment in time into a small work of art. And I'm not saying that they're all Picassos.
Right. They're not all masterpieces.
They're not all masterpieces, because then the third factor that comes in is there's storytelling, right? And so the storytelling for me is like, let's say I've got 15 frames, 15 shots that I want to use in a match. They are going to tell a story of the match. And they're not going to tell the whole story, but they're going to tell, there's going to be a linear narrative to what's going on in the match. And that is another factor that I think that makes me stand out, and a couple of the other guys stand out, versus, and here's an example, like these AP shooters. I was just in Santiago, Chile at the Pan Am Games. They will, their whole thing is they need one or two shots of a person. They need a hand raise and an action shot. And that's all they need.
Right.
With a face involved. And they will sacrifice the next match. They'll sacrifice half of the next match while they're uploading, they're doing quick processing, they're putting in the captions, and they're uploading those, sacrificing the first half of the next match. And then they'll pick up their camera and they'll get an action shot and a hand raise of,
and then they'll edit match. And then they'll upload, and then
exactly. And I am like, that ain't me.
Right. That's
not what I'm trying to do. One, I don't want to miss action. Like, it is that perfect golf shot. It is a drug. Right. It is like, if two people are flying, if you miss a shot, like if I hear the crowd roar, my heart sinks, right? If I'm like walking, I went to the bathroom or something like that, I'm like, oh crap, what I miss. And now I'll literally ask people, I'll be like, do you see what it was? And then, I'll be like, did you get a ref in the way? Secretly hoping nobody got the shot. I don't think that way. I hope people got the shot.
Well, I hear you, but okay, there are pros and cons to what I do and what you do. Meaning, I usually work on the video side of things. You usually work on the still side of things. I can always go to the stream footage. You can't. Like, you don't have that option.
Yeah.
you know?
If I didn't
So
take the shot, I don't have the shot.
you don't have the shot. Like if you don't like, whereas like it's difficult for us to stay in focus. Yeah, okay, there's pros and cons. But I can always lean on the stream. 99 out of 100 times can lean on the stream footage. If I didn't get it, I can always story tell around it, right? You guys don't have that luxury. So let me ask you this. What is more important to you? Telling the story or just getting the shot? So like what's the process, I guess, is what I'm asking.
Yeah, getting the shot. So first and foremost is, did you capture the in every single wrestling match, almost, no offense to Greco, but if like somebody comes out and hits a couple of gun wrenches, or if there's a shot where the head is buried and then they leg lace. Leg laces and gut wrenches are the scourge of all wrestling photographers.
Right.
So getting the shot in,
unless you're James Green, by the way, your shot at James Green place is the most incredible thing.
Yeah, ever. That was insane. Yeah, that was crazy. But
sorry, go ahead. Sorry to interrupt again. I'm geeking out here because I do generally, I genuinely love the artistic approach to the sport that is taken by you, but not very many others. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's it. So it's getting, so it would go art, storytelling in answer to your question, right? It would be getting that shot, making sure you get that primary action. And you can fail, and that's fine. There are going to be other matches. It's a lot like the athletes, right? You lose a match. Let's say you have a shitty day, or you have a shitty, you miss a shot. Life goes on. I remember really good shots that I missed. Like I'll remember for years.
Tell me one that you missed.
Yeah, it was Fargo. It was about 3 years ago, and I was sitting next to Zach Errett, the official, and it was a dude was coming around with a double leg takedown, and they were both flying in the air straight at me, and I missed it. I don't know if I was looking at my phone or what I was doing, but like I just saw the most gorgeous action coming at me, and I didn't have my camera up and ready to go. And I turned to Zach. This is a true story. I turned to him and I said, Zach, I missed that shot. And he's like, oh man, that sucks. And I'm like, Zach, I'm going to remember that I missed that shot probably for the rest of my life. And he laughed. And
but so it's true.
Year, I was like, hey, do you remember that shot I missed last year? But it's true, right? Like it's, it's.
Can we chalk that up to the officials getting in the way of another action?
Totally, sure.
Okay.
No, he wasn't the official. He was sitting next.
No, I know, but he is an official. So he got in the way.
Yeah, right. Maybe I was talking to him. I don't know.
I have 2 or 3 shots in mind. I've mentioned one already. What's your favorite shot that you've ever gotten?
Well, it's this shot that's on my front door. It's from the Pan Am Games in 2000. Would it be 15? In Toronto. And interestingly, it was a bronze medal match. Nobody was really paying much attention to what was going on. And I was talking to a dude next to me. We're sitting on these benches that they have for Pan Am Games. And we were just chatting. He was a newspaper guy. He hadn't chatted a lot of wrestling and stuff. And I kind of trained myself. If I'm just sitting there casually, the camera is up. Like it's not my lap. It's not down. It's kind of just sitting there,
It's on a monopod usually.
It's on a monopod, right? But it's not sitting against my shoulder or anything like that. It's just kind of generally pointing toward the mat. And this dude started hitting the double, and on big moves, you've all been there. All the wrestling fans have been there. On those big moves, you can hear the crowd. I'm sure there's a scientific word for it. Some people that are into audio, like there's an audible like noise that happens as a big move is about to happen. I mean, it's people going like, ooh,
right.
Like, ooh, right. Well, that started, and this dude came around on a double and just leaped in the air and it was dead on. I had both faces. I had the official looking like with his eyes wide open, and they're maybe 3 feet in the air, both of them.
All feet off the ground. I'm sending it to Joel right now. Joel,
Yeah.
if you could somehow get this up, it'd be freaking killer. Okay. So that's your favorite shot.
Well, here, I guess it's a tricky question, Mike, and I love your tricky questions. So, from an action standpoint, that's my favorite shot. But storytelling, it's
much
like
more
Snyder over Sedgelayev, to win the team championship in 2017 Worlds, right? Sedgelayev won, or Snyder-Layev won. Helen beating, winning gold. I mean, the storytelling, right, can become very emotional. And with Helen, I mean, I'm not lying. Like, I was crying, like full tears. And the podium shots, I mean, I am just bawling, right? Like, just because how much work and passion went into her winning the 2000.
First of all, taking out Icho, right? Like, that's humongous.
Yeah.
Second of all, like, I was skeptical she was going to make that weight. Like there's just so many different things that were like, and this is a full-on year.
Yeah.
That she has been kind of slowly descending, and then to do it on the biggest stage. Yeah, no, I remember where I was. Like, so there are moments.
Yep.
That you've captured. I remember I was sitting in a freaking Chili's in I'm not kidding. I swear to God, I was sitting in a Chili's with my family because it was the day that we, like 2 days after we moved to Texas, right, in 2016. And it was just like, I'm sitting there screaming at a Chili's.
Right.
And these people are like, you guys are fucking nuts.
Yeah, right. Sir.
Yeah, like, so yeah, it was wild, dude. It was wild. Yeah. So I didn't want to influence your decision, but yeah, the storytelling to me is, and again, maybe it's because I know all the storylines, right?
Yeah.
That I feel more connected to some of the shots that you've taken. Like, my favorite shot is of the Mongolian coaches in 2016 in their underwear. Like,
yeah,
I don't think people realize how wild that was. I mean, social media was obviously around 2016, but I don't think that it got nearly the amount of play that it would have today on social media. These dudes stripped down to their skippies in the middle of the Olympics.
Yeah.
And started throwing their clothes at the officials, and with good reason.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I knew in the moment, I mean, obviously I'm shooting photographs of it, but I'm kind of like you, going like, this is okay. This is categorically the craziest thing I've ever seen at a wrestling tournament. And I've been to, I mean, my dad was a coach, like I said. I was doing some rough, I mean, it has to be in the tens of thousands, or I don't know, like, tens of thousands of wrestling tournaments, like thousands, let's go thousands. Of wrestling tournaments. I mean, where you've seen everything. You've seen crazy moms. You've seen parents running on the mat. You've seen like everything, and that is happening at the Olympics. And you're like, okay, this is categorically the craziest thing I have ever seen at a wrestling tournament, and I've got to take photos of it. I mean, I wanted to sit there and like laugh, but it was like, this is nuts, and yeah, I got to shoot it, and that brings up, and you didn't ask, but like having to shoot through. I mean, having to shoot people that I love, wrestlers that I love, lose, and still have to shoot that. Imagine being a storyteller, right? Like, and you're telling a story of one of your favorite people in the world, a wrestler, say Sarah Hildebrand is one of my favorite people in the world, and having to shoot the match at the Olympics where she loses. It's like, again, you're shooting through tears, right? You're like, oh my God, this is so painful for me to do. But as a historian, as a storyteller, I just have to do it, and then I have to relive it when you edit. It's like, man, this is hard. It's hard stuff sometimes.
Are you thinking about the storylines prior to a tournament, or is that something where you like shoot and then are looking back, or you're thinking about it as the tournament's going?
No, I am invested in the sport. I think it makes, I don't want this to sound egotistical when I say things like me. It makes me a better photographer because I listen to you guys. I listen to a lot of the podcasts. I study the stuff, right? I pay attention to what Willie's saying, for better or worse.
Wow, look, I mean, you can always find a gem in there for sure.
Yeah, no, but in answer to the question, Joel, is no. I am very aware of what's going on both in the domestic scene and the international scene, right? So I knew, let's say, like if there's a big match coming up in the early rounds of Worlds that has meaning, I will intentionally go to that mat and like shoot it and stuff. And I think that kind of knowledge is helpful, and it's helpful for other media because they'll be like, hey, did you happen to, and I'm like, yeah, no, I was over there, because I know that, I don't know the exact example, but it's like, well, these were both Americans, right?
Right. Sebastian Rivera is wrestling, an American, Yanni or whomever. But
yeah, exactly.
I think you're downplaying your investment in the sport and how and why it makes you one of the best photographers in the world. But it's not the only thing that makes you one of the best photographers in the world. It's the fact that you have an understanding, an intimate understanding of the sport, both from a macro and micro level. And what I mean by that is you've wrestled. So here's why I enjoy being behind the camera. I know where the action's going. I've seen so many freaking wrestling matches in my life that I can anticipate, like, this ankle pick is probably going to wind up over here. I might want to start moving the camera over that way here soon. So it's like, it's the anticipatory aspect for me that makes you great. Now here's the trick. And I guess here's the question. How do you get good at the technical aspect of the actual shot as it pertains to wrestling? Because my biggest problem has been, oh shit, that was cool.
Yeah.
Like you just go like, oh no. Oh, that's tricky, man.
Concentration. And I joke all the time, like life, like it's like there are evil forces around that are just constantly throwing things to distract you. Whether it's somebody in the background or whether it's somebody sitting next to you, whether it's other shooters. Cause like there's a funny story, and I'll get to the deeper part of your question in a second, but like, non-wrestling people will be sitting next to me and at something like the Pan Am Games or the Olympics or whatever. I mean, you are crowded in and you can hear everybody when they fire, right? Particularly older cameras. The mirrorless cameras make a little less noise, but you can hear like, and I swear to God, I've done this before. I would play with the non-wrestling shooters. I would just fire and they would fire like right after me. And it would bring me so much joy to do that. But
you got a ref picking your nose. Good for you.
Totally. And I'm like, oh shit. And then they'll just go. But I don't know. Honestly, I think like we all have gifts that we're given by, whether it's God or just hereditary or genetics or whatever. People are particularly good. I just happen to have very good fast twitch, like from sight to button press. I'm extremely quick. But I think what it comes down to, Mike, is exactly like you. I've been around it so long, and you can do this too, I bet. You know that the absolute minutia of movement prior to a shot being taken, right?
Mm-hmm.
You'll see it from Jordan, and then you'll be able to repeat. So Jordan, you'll know that Jordan Burroughs will reattack in certain situations, and you just have that back in the back of your brain. And so then you can foreshadow that, oh, dude just took a half shot.
Here it comes.
Burroughs is going to go.
You'll hear me say it. You'll hear me say it on mic. I'll go, here it comes. Here it comes. Right?
Exactly.
And yeah, there is a lot of mental reps.
Yeah.
That go into that. Joel, do you have any? Because I can go for a day here like this.
I was gonna like while we're on the subject, can you enjoy a wrestling tournament while you're shooting it?
Can I enjoy it? Yeah. I can. They're a lot of work, and it's a little thankless. Like, I, I will, let's say like NCAA's. It is not uncommon for me to literally run back off the floor. Take one of those, like there are these boxes that have like a little can of tuna fish and like 4 crackers. Stuff that in my face, take a sip of water, and run back out on the floor. But that's kind of the discipline it takes to like to do it, right? And for me, one, I might be covering schools, and I can't miss a match. 2, I don't like to miss action, or there might be one of the matches like we're talking about. There might be around a 16 match that's quite compelling because these 2 kids actually wrestled on the same team in high school. Like,
Right.
2 POA kids, like, are up. They're wrestling for different schools. That's compelling to me. Like, I just want to see that match, right?
Right.
Like, so in answer to your question, yeah, I love it. I mean, that's why I'm doing it, right? I love the sport of wrestling, and it's not to say that I'm enjoying every minute of a tournament, because it can get very, very taxing. You're constantly having to keep your concentration level up. You get hungry, you get tired, your body starts to hurt, and all those, remember I mentioned earlier, all those distractions will keep you from allowing that flow. So like there's a flow to be able to catch Jordan Burroughs hitting a shot like that. I'm not consciously thinking of it. It's all unconsciously happening. And in order to stay focused like that, I have to try to eliminate those external factors. And that's really hard to do when your ass is tired, when your back is sore, my arm is sore, I'm hungry, I'm thirsty, there's somebody with bad breath next to me, whatever. It's like all of that has to just get kind of pushed aside, and you focus. But I do love it. I am able to enjoy it for the most part, right?
Is there more artistic energy put into the shot or the edit?
The edit.
Really?
I mean, the shot, obviously, so in order to get a great shot, you have to be there. So you have to travel, you have to get there, you have to have the right gear, and these days, because of lighting conditions and stuff like that, it's, you have to keep your gear modern. You have to be in the right place, so you have to be on the floor, you have to earn the right to be on the floor. And then there's a fair amount of luck that has to happen, right? Like the angle has to be right, and you have to fire, and the ref is not in the way. And so all of that stuff is under your control, but it's not necessarily, you haven't put the brush to the canvas yet. Right? And so then preparation is key to it all. Then let's say the action happens and you take the shot, and you have up to that point determined what kind of settings are right for the situation, because you do that. Like when I walk into an arena, people always are like, you'll come up to me and talk to me, and what's going through my head initially is, what are the lighting conditions like? What kind of lights are there? What color are the mats? Where are the finals? Blah, blah, blah. Like I just immediately I'm taking in a lot of data on like how the shots are going to look, at the end of the day. So anyways, you get that shot, and that's all preparation. That's all timing. That's all skill. But then once it's in the can, as they say, you either that day, or you come home and you got to edit all out the crappy ones around it, right? And then, or the ones that are unnecessary in the storytelling and in the art, and then you bring it into Lightroom, or you bring it into Photoshop, and you tune it. And that, for me, is a big part of the artwork. You have to really have a good eye for color, contrast, all of these things. What's too much? What's just enough? My whole thing is skin tone. Skin tone trumps everything. And that's why my shots look better. If the skin tone is off, the shot's just going to look off. So even if the background was gray and now it looks green. As long as the skin tone of the wrestlers it looks good, the shot will look okay.
Interesting.
So
can you pick out your let me rephrase that. I can pick out your work versus Justin's work versus Zach's work. I can pick it out. Out of a lineup of 10, 20. How do you go about creating an identity for your work? That is not easy, dude.
It's not easy, and it's you have to, I think you have to kind of be good. You have to stand out. You need to find that voice, as it were, right? In the writing world, right? You've got to find your voice and you got to stick with it. You look, Sam Janicki is a great photographer. He really likes a lot of light. He will put up strobes, and I commend him for sticking with that and finding that voice, and that's what he likes. And it's like, power to you, man. Like, it's not particularly my thing. It does, and in a way, his stuff stands out from mine and mine from his. And where it gets weird is at things like the Olympics, where everybody's shooting the same camera, same lenses, same lighting conditions and stuff. That's where I'll get tripped up. Or at World Championships, it's funny because yes, I can identify my shot just at a glance, right? And I've gotten burned once where I came after somebody, not after them, but I was like, "Hey, you're using my shot." And then they're like, "No, that's not yours. That's so-and-so's from years from Germany." And I'm like, "Oh, snap." Right. Because we were both using Nikon D6, same lenses and stuff like that. And with the lighting conditions being where you don't have to tune the photos too much in post-processing. Yeah. So they're starting to equalize a little bit, but that's only at those bigger events. The worse the lighting conditions, the more you're going to stand out. Because I'm the guy, I'll be up till 3 a.m. very often, working on it. Every single shot gets love and gets some attention, right? And interestingly, like with I used to shoot for UWW. Their speed is trumping art, or speed is trumping quality. So they're forcing those guys to post unprocessed JPEGs immediately, which, I get it. And in the camera, you can make adjustments and get them to look decent, good enough, right? And I don't shoot with them now, and I would push back. I'd be like, that ain't my game. I mean, I can do that. I've done that. I did it. I didn't have the colors right, and I did it for the OTTs for 2020, and I was posting them right away, and these shots are still out there. Then I'm like, oh God, those are terrible. Like, it hurts my soul, right? That I'll see it and I'll know exactly like which one was like a JPEG that I had posted right from Matt's side that wasn't color corrected correctly. That's too yellow. That's out there, and I'm like,
those mats were gleaming. They were gleaming. They were for those of you that don't know, the Olympic team trials in 2021, right?
Well, it was 20. Well, yeah, when was it? I don't know.
It was 21.
Yeah.
So, but the point is though that they were white on like light gray with it looked like they were glowing.
But white is good. By the way, I help pick those colors because I was like, if you do red, I will not go. Like, I will jump off.
Because everyone's skin tone is off.
It's so horrible. So actually, like Taylor called and said, we're working on it. I'm like, okay, well, so white is okay. It's the other ambient light that's coming on it. And also, like, it's just you can do a lot of adjustments in your camera. Like, the adjustments you do in your camera are just the JPEG that you see in your camera and the JPEG that you would see. It's not the raw file, which is really just data that you really work on. That's your palette, right? You were working on the raw file. You can tune JPEGs, but it's invasive. So you're like actually changing pixels, which with raw, I don't want to get too geeked out on it, but anyways, if you're not dialed in and you're posting straight from the mat, your shots aren't going to look as good quality. And that's the point, is like they're out there in the world, and yeah, it hurts sometimes. But
I think you'll be just fine. I think you'll make it through.
Yeah. There's one other point. Like then there's a historian part of me, right? So that's the 3 a.m. stuff. So I'm, like right now I'm working on Pan Am stuff, and I'm, it's the round of 16 of, Guatemala versus Peru, decent shot. And I'm like, why? And then so one thing that I do stand out is I don't know anyone that has a catalog that's as available, searchable, that's as dense. I mean, I genuinely, I think that factors into what makes a photographer great. Like, you have to be able to find the photos, right? If they aren't putting their photos out there then sure, you're a great photographer, but they have to be available and easily accessible, right? And so
You
that's a
mean
big thing.
labeling them IMG.27957 isn't helpful? That's
Right.
weird. It's weird that you say that.
Right. So for me, it's like it's in the caption. It's not the file name, but it's in the caption, right? And that's why during COVID, my wife thought I was insane, because she's like, "Well, what photos are you working on?" And I'm like, "Well, these are the 2013, Fila Junior, photos, but they haven't been captioned correctly, and they haven't been moved over." I moved to SmugMug about 5 years ago, and so there are legacy photos from between 2006 and I don't know 2013 or so that are like have not been moved over to my catalog in it, and I'm like, I need to move them over, and I need to caption them, because you got some great senior level post college coaches, Bill Zadig, photos of Bill Zadig wrestling, at team trials and stuff like that. And it's fun to go up and be like, "Oh, Bill, look at you." And then I'll reprocess them and caption them. Is the most important thing. So then when I retire or die or whatever, there will be the most dense, the best collection of wrestling photos from about 2007 to whenever it is. That time frame will have the most cataloged photos available for USA Wrestling. And then I'm even working on, I got my buddy Sam Herring, and I actually have to meet with him about this, but he's going to keep the SmugMug account going, and we don't need to get into this right now. It's a little macabre, but it's like, in the digital age, when you die, what happens to your stuff? Like, if it's all up on SmugMug and all of a sudden you're not paying SmugMug, or SmugMug moves to some other platform, it's like in the old days, you've got slides or pictures, you go through and you put catalogs together and stuff like that. It's like, what happens to your digital photographs? It's interesting stuff to think about.
You've got to experience so many different aspects of wrestling, obviously being a wrestler, an official, a coach. How have those experiences helped to kind of translate what you're doing today?
Well, I think they all kind of collectively add. It's like anything in life, right? Experience, having different experiences is super helpful. So the coaching, what's interesting too is that, having coached some then, I can kind of coach some now, but in a more mature way, and thinking it through, and not thinking about coaching, thinking about photography, and then thinking a little bit about coaching, giving kids a little bit of advice. I mean, I'm no Mike Mao, but I just think that, like anything in life, you just, collective experience and wisdom, all starts to add up and stuff.
Go ahead, Joel, because I want to start firing away our quick questions.
Yeah, you got to do the Rushmores, because I spent some time on this one. I did my homework.
Nice. We're prepared. I love it. Go ahead.
What would you say to a mom or a dad who got a DSLR for Christmas and are like, "I'm a photographer"? What would you say is different between what you do and why you charge for photography versus what they're doing?
Well, for me, it's kind of turned into a profession, right? So it's So I think it's great that mom and dad got a DSLR. And what I would say to them, I thought you were going to ask, like, what advice would I give them? And it's shoot a lot. Like, just go and shoot and use it and use it and use it and use it in different lighting conditions. And you have to figure out the post-processing stuff. You have to. And that's the thing. So it's like, you need a DSLR and you need a computer with Lightroom. You can do it without, but and I get it. Phones are great, but there's a reason why there are filters on your phone, right? And that sort of thing. There's a reason why there are all those tools on your phone. I mean, when you take a picture and then it suggests like, oh, you want to change the contrast or the tint or whatever, that's the same thing Lightroom is doing with like a DSLR, photo. So, and then caring and investigating and being creative and having passion about it and just, wanting to get better at something, right? And putting the time and effort into doing it. For me, it's
what he's saying is that those are all the things that separate him from mom and dad with a DSLR. See, Tony's too nice to say it, but that's the truth, right? Like, that's the God's honest truth is like, look, you got to do this. A lot, like a whole lot,
like a whole lot. And the kids that come up to me and say, well, how do I get into media? Freaking do it. Just do it. Like, I set up the first Behind the Dirt was shot on an iPhone 4. An iPhone 4 that was propped up against the kettlebell. And that was it. Like, you just got to do it. Yeah. A lot. And you gotta expect to suck at it like for a long time. Like it's gonna be bad for a while,
Yeah. How many hours would you say you are spending per year?
You're killing me. Yeah, I have to get back to you on that because do you factor in travel?
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, a lot. And it's the post-processing, the editing, the captioning, that's the killer. And this is what I'm saying. Like, I don't know anyone. And honestly, it's again, not to put anybody down, but I don't know anyone that's doing that amount of work to whittle down every single session to say 250 to 350 shots, but then go in and look up the bracket and actually caption those shots for the early rounds and stuff. And I'll scold myself when I start slagging because I'm like, I don't know those two kids. And it gets weird because I'll start looking at like, well, one of them must have won. So maybe I have a shot of that kid. Well, what kind of shoes did he wear? Did he wear a knee pad on his right? Okay, he wore a yellow knee pad on his right knee. Okay, let me go back over. Oh, that's that kid. That must be that match. And it's like, I'm like sitting there going, this is obsessive. Yeah, it is a lot. And it is probably obsessive, but
that's okay. No, but again, these are things that make you great. All right, let's get moving on the quick questions here.
Yeah.
Favorite wrestling shoe, Tony?
Okay, an all black Tiger. What is it? Onasoka.
Yeah.
I freaking love those. My dad had a pair, and he would let me wear them once in a while, and I love those shoes.
That's a good one. That's a good answer. Yeah. That's a very, very good answer, sir. That is the Cadillac, like the old school like Cadillac. Oh yeah, that's good. I like that. All right. If you could change one thing about the sport, you had a magic wand.
Yep.
What would it be?
No fog machines ever anywhere, even near the building. No outlaw fog machines from every wrestling event. Ever.
Why fog machines?
Because they make with photos.
Yeah,
they are terrible. They're only for the in-house, and they're only for the lighting guys' ego. And I was told recently that apparently there's like new fog. It's I don't know, hydrogen, I think, or I don't know what they said, but apparently it's like it's not visible to the naked eye, but when the light hits it, it will. So it's doing what they want fog to do in a light show, right? Which is you can see the beams of light.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And they were saying that like it will catch the light, but from the naked eye you can't actually see it. And I'm like, okay, that maybe, but
maybe.
No fog machines.
I love it. I love the minutia of that. That's wonderful. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's hear it. Let's hear your Rushmore, brother.
So here's the thing. I think that everybody gets so caught up in the recency bias, right? And I really spent some time, like I looked up like who were the 4 presidents, why were they chosen, right? And so Harold Nichols, like the dude coached Gable, right? His coaching tree is completely insane, right? He had 6 NCAA championships. He coached over 37 seasons. He coached Gable, right? He coached another guy on Rushmore, right? So that Washington was the birth, right? So Harold Nichols, right? Now Thomas Jefferson was chosen for growth, right? And now hang on your seats, but Cliff Keen, he coached Nichols. He coached for 45 years. He changed the mat from a square to a circle, and he invented headgear, whether you like it or not.
Okay.
So what I'm going with this,
so that's inroad. So you're talking about inroad of making a deep cut, so to speak. Okay.
Because, I get it. Like everybody's like Gable, maybe Baumgartner, Smith, Burroughs. What do you do with Kale? Right? I get it. But we're really, if we that's all recency stuff. But I'm about to get there, right? So then you got preservation. Abe Lincoln was chosen for preservation. There you got Gable, right? So it was Harold Nichols, Cliff Keen, Dan Gable. Now I am right there with you guys. So Roosevelt was chosen for development. And this is where I get jammed up. I actually think John.
Yeah, it has to be.
Smith.
Yeah.
Because I think not only did John do what he did, his accomplishments are very clearly very difficult to replicate, but he changed an entire style of wrestling. Like, and I 100%. Really admire that.
Yeah, 100%. You know that I'm sure you do. They tried to outlaw.
Yeah, right.
They tried to outlaw getting that low in your stance and putting a hand on the mat. They tried to. The Russians were like, he can't do that.
Yeah,
why not?
Stalin.
You know what I mean? Yeah, right. So, but like, you want to talk about transformative? Yeah, John W.
With the accomplishments, right?
Yeah, right. Like, so it's not, yes, low single for sure. Even though you can make an argument that it had negative effects almost, right? Because then it brought in funk wrestling, which made us really ugly in terms of technique for a long time.
Yep.
But just inroad. Like the dude made a tremendous. In fact, there's a big part of me that wants to put together a short, like 20-minute documentary on modern era, starting with Gable. Okay, the modern era of wrestling, starting with Gable. Okay, where the modern era exhibits that hard work can get you very far in this sport, right? Because Dan Gable was not the most gifted athlete in the world, right? And then there's like this postmodern era, okay, with John W. And like hard work plus technique can get you this far. And then you would use another term like, I don't know, meta modern or something like that to speak. And I think that's the stage that we're in right now with Jordan Burroughs. Is Jordan has the hard work, the technique, and the adaptability, okay, that it takes. And now and when I say adaptability, I don't just mean on a wrestling mat. The dude is so special when it comes to his nutrition. The dude is so special when it comes to being an outward ambassador of the sport. The dude is so special when it comes to being an incredible dad. Like, so like all these things are like encompassed in this brand new age of wrestling in this country. And I just don't know that it's being talked about enough, and how one led to the next, to the next, to the next. And it's impressive to me, man. It's really impressive.
Absolutely. Yeah, if you ever hear him, I mean, we've all heard him talk, and you're like, you had to have rehearsed that. Please,
For sure,
please.
it boggles my mind.
Like, please
The
tell me
stuff that he
you
could
and
come off
Lauren
with.
were
Come
like,
on.
you know, like the stuff that comes out of his mouth is like, that is the perfect soundbite. It's, you know,
He's incredible.
Yeah,
He's
he
incredible.
is.
Shout out Tony. That has to be among the most thought out Mount Rushmore answers that we've had so far.
Oh, man.
Appreciate you. I really do.
Thanks, guys.
Okay. All right. We got to get out of here. Tony, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it. And we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Sounds good. See ya.